JJ the CPA here. So with the PPP, that Paycheck Protection Program, I just want to follow up. We've had a lot of questions about the different categories, right? We have sole proprietor, self-employed, independent contractor, right? And then we know a few other things kind of creep into that I'm going to talk about with you. So the first thing to note is that when you're a sole proprietor, I'm going to pull this up, then you are filing a Schedule C. And when you're filing a Schedule C, in essence, you've got this right here. You're going to file under your tax ID number if you have one. If you have employees, then you would. But on the Schedule C, it's nothing more than your profit and loss for your business. And it's going to be based on that net income. And then when we're dealing with the sole proprietor, it says right there on Schedule C, sole proprietor. Now here's the thing, if you're self-employed and you're an independent contractor, for me, I'm still using Schedule C because they are putting their income here, right? The client is, but then you may have expenses to offset it. So if you are reaching a level of discussion of, well, am I a sole proprietor? Am I an independent contractor? What is it that I would classify myself as? It's all really the same thing, because really for us, everything goes on Schedule C, even if there is no expenses, but it is subject to self-employment tax. That's a real key here, is that Schedule C and then these other categories, independent contractor, the self-employed, these other categories, that income is subject to self-employment tax, which is Social Security and Medicare. So when an employee is paid wages, they have Social Security and Medicare withheld, and the employer matches Social Security and Medicare, right? 15.3% because it's 7.65% on each side, withheld and matched by the employer. When you work for yourself, which is sole proprietor, it is self-employment, and it is independent contractor, well, no one's paying those taxes for you. So you, on your net, will pay that 15.3% in tax, as in self-employment tax. So that's why all three of these scenarios are able to come together and actually apply for the PPP. Now, when we're talking about, there's a description here that I've come across called gig, and it's just what it sounds like. It's somebody that think of a musician, right, that has gigs. So they're not doing enough with any one person or one established, most likely to get a W-2 or a 1099. They're just making money, right? So whatever it is that they're doing, it's kind of between an independent contractor and a sole proprietorship. Sole proprietorship would be ongoing with regular activity. A gig, okay, kind of that self-employed, it seems like where they're landing on this is, like, well, I'm going to go do this, and then, I may not do that again, or I'm going to do this. And when you have someone that's an independent contractor, typically they're doing work for 1, 2, 3 specific companies, and then the company's paying them as an independent contractor, which usually then doesn't lead to very many expenses. But nonetheless, when you're pulling together the forms here to go onto your schedule, let's see, so this application, and it's SB Form 2483. It was updated here. So make sure that you're also doing this application right here. And then sole proprietor, you would just, if you're doing a Schedule C, mark it there. If you feel like you're an independent contractor or you are self-employed, well, you're going to just report that on the Schedule C anyways. But sole proprietor, if you ask me, is more of the routine. It would probably be a separately set up entity, but for whatever reason it's not. And then for an independent contractor, that's someone that's just working for one or two people possibly at a time. And on that independent contractor and the eligible self-employed, the next items that are up here. So we have the sole proprietor on this, and then we also have independent contractor, and we have self-employed individual. So with that being said, you are, as the person that's getting ready to go get this PPP, if you're paying any independent contractors, or anybody that's self-employed or another sole proprietorship, you don't get to include that in the calculation of your payroll costs. Pulling up this list, so I've got another video where I went through the list. That would pretty well take care of it for the employer that has employees, pulling together this information for the quarters and for the year. But now on the sole proprietor, and I'm going to walk through in another video the actual calculation. When you're looking at Schedule C, that's the net business income. Schedule SE is where self-employment taxes are in essence determined, calculated, and it's an extra tax that's added on. That self-employment tax again puts that self-employed individual in the same shoes as an employee, in part because they're having to take care of the Social Security Medicare withheld as well as the Social Security Medicare match. And then on Schedule 1, we're going to talk about that. You're able to get a couple of pieces of information off that, which is your health insurance and your retirement plan. And then, as a sole proprietor, you very well you may have received some 1099s. You want your insurance records, some retirement contributions. Really from my perspective on the PPP, you can go and apply now. It's the independent contractors and self-employed, for whatever reason, that won't be able to start applying for this until Friday the 10th. But you're going to want the same documentation. Now, if you have an S Corp, you have a partnership, you're not a sole proprietor, okay? What you are is a partnership, or you're an S Corp, or you're a C Corp. Now, so with the independent contractors, assuming you don't have any expenses, but you would, in essence, bring your 1099s. If you have a Schedule C, bring that. Shouldn't be a big deal. And then sole proprietors with employees, I'm going to walk through an example on that. So this would be somebody that they are filing that Schedule C. See if I can pull it up fast enough. They are filing that Schedule C. Yeah, nope. And right here, the net, okay, that's what you're wanting to focus in on. See if there's any add backs. Okay, we do, like you said, we do have until June 30. Okay, so if we're looking at the Schedule 1, we need that, the SE. We talked about the payment protection program. On this, number of employees would be 1 if it's just you, obviously more if you have W-2 employees, but you wouldn't include a number of employees, anything that is related to your, goodness, let me make sure I'm still on, yeah, anything that's related to the independent contractors that you're paying. Of course, you're the 20% or more owner. That's the only way that you can do a Schedule C, is if you have multiple owners, you wouldn't be filing on Schedule C anyways. And then as it relates to, let's see, well, get back to the checklist. So if you all are coming across information from the bank and they're asking for information that's not on the list, again, it's not that I forgot it, it's just the bank's decided to pull together some information and be making creditor decision, but they're not making a credit decision based on pass or fail or acceptance or not. What they're making a game plan on is, when we get to this point, where are we going to be? And in fact, I have a survival guide at JJ the CPA Help. Costs you nothing to get it, not even an email. All right, so a couple of things to note. What you pay someone else other than employees does not count. Rent, utilities, interest is an expense taken into account with what can be spent. Then we have employer taxes. Those are withheld. That's the Social Security Medicare match, the few to match. And then if you do not have an FEIN, then use your Social Security number. And I don't mean if you're filing a separate return. I'm saying individual return, you go to Schedule C, there's no EIN there, you would be applying in your Social Security. But what I had read this morning, the other morning, was that if you have a spouse and they both own businesses, if they were formalized separately from each other, like a flow-through entity or a C Corp, then yes, the companies can file on their own. But that's not the case, so you need to file personally. And so in essence, you're going to want to make sure that you're pulling together, if you are paying yourself wages, or that Schedule C. But you can do a makeshift Schedule C, and I think it'll be fine. What you pay someone else other than employee doesn't count, as I say at the bottom. Rent, utilities, interest is expense taken into account with what can be spent, and then employer federal taxes are excluded. And if you do not have an FEIN, then you can use your Social Security number. So let me see. Let me make sure I covered everything I was meaning to. On the 1099s that you're receiving, you're looking at box 7 for the miscellaneous. And then on the Schedule C. And then know this, if you're a sole proprietor and you're an independent contractor, you might actually look at, let's see, yeah, you might actually look at what the bank's going to want before you go too crazy. So here's the information. If you have it at your fingertips, pull it together, and then you're ready to rock. Okay? So I'm going to do another video on how to calculate this as a sole proprietor, and then I'll do another video on what if you're a sole proprietor and also have employees. All right. Hey, thanks for tuning in. I'd love it if you'd subscribe. I appreciate it so much. JJ the CPA out.